Hello and welcome to Eye on Ocean County. I'm Laura Jones. Our guest this half hour is Rush Russell. He is the Executive Director of Prevent Child Abuse New Jersey, and it's good to have you here.
Good afternoon.
I want to give our audience a little perspective. When you say child abuse, that can mean a lot of things. Tell me what it is that your organization is aimed at helping.
Well, our mission is to prevent child abuse before it ever happens. And so our mission really is one about a positive message about helping families get off to a healthy start, to raise happy, safe, carefree, have for children to have a carefree childhood.
You're talking about preventing child abuse and helping parents. You think about an abuser, and a stereotypical abuser is either someone who's been abused before or perhaps somebody who is a low income, poor person, that doesn't have the means. Who are the...
Child abuse can happen anywhere, and neglect as well. Mm-hmm. And the common denominator related to child abuse is probably stress. Mm-hmm. Sometimes a lack of information about healthy child development. Certainly not having sufficient income can be a stressor. Not having other role models. A single parent, for example, that doesn't have the education to understand healthy child development. So a child's crying. What do you do? Children may cry for a while, and that's normal behavior. If you understand that, you may react differently. It may be nutrition issues. It may be warmth or being too cool. So understanding some of those issues can calm a situation and prevent something as horrible as child abuse.
But child abuse is something that cuts across all social, all economic levels, I would imagine.
Absolutely, absolutely. It does tend to, it increases in terms of, stress factors. So parents that are facing more stress are more likely. And that's why most of our programs do focus on communities where there's fewer resources, there's fewer supports for parents. And most of our programs focus on educating parents so they better understand how to navigate stress, how to understand discipline, how to understand health care and nutrition, positive childhood development.
How do you find those parents? Because if parents don't know how to deal with their own children, how are they even going to know to reach out to an organization like yours? Or they might be afraid to think, well, they're going to immediately think I'm an abuser and turn me in.
For the most part, referrals come from hospitals in the prenatal care provider. They may identify a family and think, okay, because of their situation, because understanding where they come from, that they may need some extra support. So they simply refer them to us, and we offer our services. So somebody may meet with them and explain, here's for example, a home visiting program. Somebody will come into your home that is helpful, supportive, and helps you understand healthy child development, maybe once a week for a couple of years. Now, a lot of new parents say, this sounds terrific.
Yeah.
This sounds like it really be a help, and it's a voluntary program. And we find that most parents, when they learn about what the program really is, it's a positive, trying to help them get off to a good start, are receptive.
It's interesting, that just made a light bulb go off in my head. My middle child was in the NICU for 4 days, and luckily he's perfectly fine. But a social worker came and they started speaking to me in there, and I was, curious. Well, why is a social worker talking to me? My husband and I are, we are fortunate enough to have the means, but perhaps they were trying to figure out if we needed additional resources because of just the circumstances of being in that intensive care unit.
You're in a stressful situation. Right. They may look at your situation, say, what kind of help do you have? And that's another way of that we provide help. We also work with teen parents. Now, teen parents, 13, 14, 15, 16 years old, may not have an understanding what healthy parenting is. They may not come from backgrounds where there's healthy parenting role models there. And we know they're especially at risk for child abuse. And so we have programs in 13 high schools across the state to work with teen parents that provides them high quality child care, but also links them with intensive parenting workshops as part of their school day to help them get off to that good start.
Well, what about in the earlier school years, in the elementary school? Are there programs that you work with in the schools to help average parents like myself who, sometimes I just have days that I just have to walk out because I've got 3 kids and maybe I'm there by myself with them and they're 5 and under, and I feel like I'm just going to lose it sometimes.
One of the programs that we have is called a Parent Information Resource Center, or PIRC, and you can go to our website and get information about PIRC. And it offers tools and ideas for both schools and for parents on things that they can do to, first of all, to become more involved in your child's education.
Right.
The reason why that's so important is that we know that kids whose parents are more involved do better in school. And the studies are dramatic on that. So there's things that you can do to get involved, to partner with your school. And that's everything from attend that teacher's conference. Sometimes we don't have time to go to that, but meet the teachers. Once they get to know you, if there is an issue, they're seeing something in your child, you can have that face-to-face communication. Once they know who you are, you know who they are. That can really help. There's a variety of ways that parents can get involved. Reading and sitting with their children, understanding what the homework is, understanding what the expectations of the school may be, building the self-esteem of a child in school, because it's a pressured environment for them.
More and more.
And so being supportive of helping them do better in school, but playing a role. What is your homework tonight? Is there some way I can help? Can we read information together? What are other resources that we could bring to the table? And the school can also play a role.
And what about, excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say single parents in particular, they've got to have a difficult time because perhaps by the time they get home, if they're in an after-school program, maybe they've already finished their homework and, they just want to get the kids fed and to bed and then, so they can deal with paying the bills or perhaps, doing something else that they have to do to make ends meet.
That is one of the big challenges, is especially for those single parents.
Yeah.
And, we're working on innovative ways to engage those parents. And, one way is that we've created resource centers in a lot of the schools where there's a computer. So they may want to come to the resource center to learn about other community services, and there's a computer there where they could, find information about other services that may be helpful. We help schools and parents organize events at the school that may be around a meal. The George Mitchell Elementary School here in Ocean County had an event last year called Breakfast and Books. And I think 300 parents attended, where they had served a breakfast and they read books together with their children, helped engage the parent, in building those early literacy skills, because that's the building block for future academic success. And it's another way that parents can be involved.
Right. And really, 10, 15 minutes, it makes a huge difference if you're able to read a child at a younger age and to again build those building blocks.
Yeah, starting early.
Right.
Very early, picture books, music, getting down on the floor and reading and singing songs and doing it together.
Got to get on their level.
And fathers need to be involved as well, doing the exact same thing. And again, the studies show that building those early literacy schools, is not only helps prevent child abuse, but these are skills that help children succeed in school. And if they get off to that positive start, there's more and more studies showing that investments in kindergarten and preschool are some of the very investments that help children succeed over their entire life in terms of getting good jobs, higher paying jobs, graduating, going on to college, etc.
But it's all about building that good foundation. You're trying to get to the parents at the early stages. Is there a definition for what child abuse is? I mean, I'm sure it can be physical, it could be emotional. How do you know if someone's being abused? If you are a neighbor, or perhaps there's someone in your child's class that you're, concerned about, or what if you're just a parent wondering, am I yelling too much? Am I too hard on my kids?
There's a definition of child abuse in terms of physical child abuse that is, basically causing injury to a child as a result of, if you think you may be spanking a child, but if you're causing an injury, visible or otherwise injury to a child, to form a child abuse, and that's a crime. There's emotional child abuse, is withholding emotional support from a child, or health care support or nutrition support that can cause serious harm. So in terms of not providing proper nutrition or meals, clothing, shelter, or withholding emotional support. In terms of yelling and all those types of things, can be emotional abuse. It has to rise to a fairly serious level where a child's really experiencing emotional damage, and that can be documented. So there are thresholds for those, and again, our work is to help parents understand how to prevent that from happening, so they don't get into the situation where they're, the timeouts can work. If you're in a situation where children can push your buttons in ways that push you, beyond where you think, you don't know what to do. And programs that we offer for parents can help them understand, first of all, this is normal. Take a deep breath. There's other tools that you can use besides, again, you think about, I'm working with somebody and I become impatient and, they're not doing what I want them to do. Would I ever think of striking them?
Right.
But we think spanking is okay.
Right.
Now, would you ever think of hitting a coworker?
Of course not.
I mean, you might want to, but you would never do it. And the impact, the studies are showing the impact in terms of spanking.
Yeah.
In some ways, although the child's not fully developed, they're starting to form attitudes about being hit.
Right.
In terms of their behavior, in terms of their cognitive ability. And there's also the line around spanking where somebody is frustrated and beyond the breaking point. So what may intended to be, I'm just spanking a child, in some ways that used to be accepted. Well, if I'm a little bit angry, that spanking becomes a belt
abusive.
or an injury, something. So the line, again, a lot of child abuse cases are associated with spanking.
Right.
And there are other ways, there are more positive ways that parents can handle those situations. And again, what Prevent Child Abuse New Jersey provides is tools and information to help parents navigate the stress of parenting, because it can be the most stressful job.
Right. To take a cue from my director, we're going to take a time out ourselves right now, but we want you to stay with us. Rush Russell is our guest. He is the Executive Director of Prevent Child Abuse New Jersey. Stay with us.